And first of all, I want to welcome all of you to our 6th annual Food Policy Council Forum, Land Access and Beyond. Yay, that's right. I'm Christy Walker, the chair of the Johnson County Food Policy Council, and I just have a few housekeeping items for you. You all know where the food is. Continue to splendid foods, keep getting them through it. We will do a last call at 7 o'clock, but as we're going along and you want a second plate, definitely get up and help yourself. And thank you to Pullman Diner for cooking the delicious meal. It looks like I can't wait to get my plate. For Field and to Family Food Hub for assisting on the local sourcing from our farmers, which I'm going to list off here. Big thank you to, and at the end we'll clap. So Heartland Fresh Family Farm did the pork from Donaldson, Iowa. All Season Harvest, the lettuce greens from Cedar Falls. Collective Farms, the radishes and garlic from Mechanicsville. Grimm Family Farm red onions from North English, Flint Ridge butternut yellow and sweet yellow onion. Early Morning Harvest, our flour. WW Homestead, the butter maple came from our Great River maple, and not a farmer, but still a good partner. Baked from the bread garden. So a big thank you to our farmers who've helped with our local foods today. Restrooms are to the right of the buffet tables. We also have a kids' corner over here for our young visitors to be entertained tonight. So thank you for Ty Coleman, for the City of Iowa City, for videotaping and live streaming on Facebook. Thank you to Johnson County staff for helping with the event organization. And we have Krista Birch from the board office taking photos here tonight. Thank you, our photographer. And thank you for all who helped so hard to make this gathering, especially Elsa, who keeps us all on the straight arrow. So we're excited about tonight's focus of building our community-based food system for supporting aspiring and current local food farmers through the programs of Johnson County Historic Poor Farm. Our goals for tonight are gather input from all of you to help develop programs from Johnson County Historic Poor Farms to support the farmers, to gauge community interest and build relationships for future program development, and to strengthen our connections to our local food farming communities. So with that, I want to welcome our Board of Supervisors liaison from Johnson County Food Policy Council, Supervisor Pat Hayden, for a few words. So Pat.
It's great to see a full house. Thank you all for coming tonight. The Johnson County Board of Supervisors believes it is important to work together to create a local food system that is healthy, vibrant, and sustainable. In 2012, the supervisors created the Johnson County Food Policy Council, one of the first county councils in the state, to advise on food and agriculture-related issues. The supervisors have supported the council in gathering input from our community members through annual public forums and other means. I appreciate the work done by the Food Policy Council to gather community stakeholders to give voice to the impacts of policies and programs that affect our local food systems. In 2018, the Board of Supervisors adopted Johnson County's comprehensive plan that emphasizes the importance of local food and agriculture in our community. Its strategic initiatives support small farming operations, encourages agritourism with a goal to become a leader in sustainable food system infrastructure. Over the years, the Council has brought needs to the attention of the Board of Supervisors, including advocating for a local foods coordinator, a full-time staff position, showing the benefits of local food hub to aggregate local products for sale to institutions such as schools, retirement communities, which are near and dear to my heart, and hospitals. These are all funded through private and public partnerships. Support for marketing and research and incubator kitchens, and voicing support for equitable opportunities for farms of all sizes and crops under our county zoning code. As a liaison to the Food Policy Council and the Historic Poor Farm, I have the opportunity to work with community shareholders to understand impacts of policies and programs, communicate local food and agriculture-related information, and support and advise the work being done. I am so pleased to be here tonight and am eager to hear all the feedback and ideas that come up in discussion today, and I always welcome any future dialogue. And now, to help set up our discussion by giving us an overview of Johnson County Historic Poor Farm Master Plan, I welcome our next speaker, the Johnson County Historic Poor Farm Project Manager, V. Fixmer Orise of Allstig Planning. Allstig? I've been working on that all day. All day. Please help me welcome V.
Thank you so much, Pat. And thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I do want to go ahead and thank the Food Policy Council for combining forces with the Johnson County Historic Poor Farm and for putting this event on. Ilsa's done an incredible job. Christy, the whole committee has been amazing. Our support from supervisors, and of course you all. Thank you for being here. So my name is V. Fixmer Rise, and I am the project manager for the Johnson County Historic Poor Farm. And I was fortunate to actually be one of the lead planners for the master planning process. It's a 10-year master plan that we created. As Pat said, it was approved in 2018, and these past few years we've been working on implementing it. So I just kind of want to give a brief overview. I've tried to get this down to 10 minutes, so, I apologize if it seems like I'm skipping around, but I'm really trying to give you an understanding of what the Poor Farm is and kind of what we're trying to do here. So with that, I'll go ahead and start with, and it's a little difficult to see, but I just wanted to give a shout out because, here we are on Native American land, and I want to make sure that we note that, and it's difficult to see this, but, just trying to recognize that Native American land, it's very important that we see, the history. That's perfect. Thank you. The history of the site and really recognize and honor those who were here before us. So I just wanted to put this out here. As you can see, we have some of the tribes that were here, and then the Algonquin family tribes, the Dakota family tribes, and I just wanted to honor that. So moving on, what is a poor farm? Actually, can I see just a raise of hands at how many people have heard of a poor farm? Oh, that's pretty great. Excellent. Well, this will be quick then. So really in the 1800s, coming over from Europe, the idea was to try and, really help people with mental health, physical disabilities, come out from, being kind of locked away in a system to now being able to have fresh air and, farm access to fields and doing doing work. And the idea was that it would be more restorative or, would help people in those systems. So it was this poor house system. And in Iowa, we had a poor farm in almost every county. And I do hope that you come visit ours at some point. But right now in Iowa, there's really only a handful that are left, and it's really incredible that the supervisors have invested in our farm. It's one of the few left that actually has existing buildings. So this is our farm. So it was established in 1855, and we've done a lot of work to it. This is some of our new signage. And if you just kind of click through here, I wanted to give you a sense of where it's actually located. So it is actually west of 218, and if anybody knows where the Armory is or secondary roads, if you've ever taken anything out to the Johnson County landfill, you've passed by it on your way out on the left-hand side. So yeah, keep going. I wanted to note that it's 160 acres, but as you can see, this delineation here is actually 120 acres, and that is actually in the historic district. So what that really means is it's registered on the National Register of Historic Places, and we have to sort of adhere to different standards. Everything has to be farm aesthetic, if that's new buildings or rehabilitating old buildings or adding anything new to the farm in general. So I want to point that out. And I just wanted to give a context, so this is an 1870 plat here, and you can see it actually looks different. So the poor farm itself has actually transformed through the years in terms of what it actually was configured as. And if you kind of click through here, you'll see that it changes. And so this is pretty much kind of how it looks now. This is a 1930s aerial, and as we click through, you'll see some of the different land changes. Some of the natural forested areas that are, or tree cover that's there was really just because it grew up. It wasn't actually planted. As you can see now, and this is current, we do have some forested areas on the site. And so I just kind of wanted to give you a sense of what this looks like. So in 2016, the Johnson County Board of Supervisors said, you know what, we're going to do this master plan. We're going to really reinvest into the historic Poor Farm. And just kind of doing a word cloud here, they identified some of their priorities. So history, food, people, you see that coming through. And then they identified some of their top priorities. And that was what drove the planning process. You know, we will look at historic preservation, local food, housing, conservation. So you get the idea that this was really kind of what we were going to focus on. And what we can say now, and this is really incredible, is that now we have this site, and this is the mission of the Poor Farm. The Johnson County Historic Poor Farm provides a public space for connecting to the land and local history through inclusive, community-led opportunities. So it's really, it's a public site, and we want to honor that. And then the values that were listed are accessibility beyond compliance, so really hearkening back to the history and connecting to the disability community in Johnson County and the surrounding area. Food justice, storytelling, collaboration, resilience, and community building. So that's the values that have been identified for the site. This is the concept, the New Century Farm concept for the Johnson County Historic Poor Farm, and it looks very active. And it is. So we have trails that are looked at, and then different types of agricultural uses. You can also see kind of in the southwest corner here, potential for housing. The New Century Farm idea is kind of why we're all here. So the supervisors identified, hey, this is an opportunity for bringing farmers to the site, and what would it look like? How could we make it an education space? You know, should we be training new farmers? Would it be access to land? What does that really look like? So that's kind of what we're doing here tonight, is taking that first step and looking at, well, what are people interested in? What are farmers interested in? And what is available? So this is actually also on the back wall if you wanted to take more time with it as we go throughout the night and just really look at, you know, constructed wetlands and things like that. And these are some of the improvements. And Jason Grimm, who is our farm manager, I don't know if you can really see it, but that's him on a mower, I believe, or tractor. Anyway, he's on something. And the maintenance and cleanup of the site took us, I don't know, a good 10 months, just because it's on the edge of town. But, you know, new signage has come up. There's 15.5-acre pollinator meadow has been planted, and this year is the second year, and conservation is going to be burning it. They're getting a burn plan together. So it's just really exciting, you know, trying to actually activate the site. I put this "Do Not Climb" sign up here because Adam Greer, who's the risk management coordinator, has been very active on the site as well. So we are always thinking about, you know, how to keep people safe. So nobody climb the silo. And if we keep going, some of the other improvements that we're working on is updating the parking and circulation. How do we create that beyond compliant accessibility? And also, how do we make sure that we maintain this historic feel so you don't feel like you're driving into a Disneyland, right? So we have to constantly keep that in mind. How do we invite the public and make it safe, and yet at the same time retain that historic nature? So we've also have updated the West Barn, what we call the West Barn. And originally the barn was actually painted red, so it's hard to miss as you are going out of town. And I hear people all the time just remark on how surprising that is. And in fact, several of the other buildings will be turning red as well. And there was an actual paint analysis. So we had an architect go in and actually unearth what color the barn was actually painted. And it's been completely restored. And this will hopefully be available for public access this late summer, early fall. So we're very excited. I also wanted to note that while we were doing these really big capital improvements, one thing that is really incredible is that we're really inviting the community. So there's been several committees or groups that have been activated as well. So we have this community action team, which is over 70 organizations have been invited. And you can see some of those listed: the Johnson County Historical Society, 4Cs Community Coordinated Childcare, Assistance Unlimited, just to name a few. It's, again, hearkening to that housing, recreation, conservation, history, those identified priorities. And then the Disability Advisory Committee is also very important. We need to make sure that we're hearkening back to the history of the site. And quite frankly, a lot of groups, people with disabilities, come out to the site. As you can imagine, there's a lot of emotion that comes up. It's really a people-centric place, and we want to make sure that people not only feel welcome, but they feel like this is their place. And the historical resources roundtable discussions that we've been having, we've been trying to get together organizations that do the history in Johnson County. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of gaps in information just simply because of the nature of the poor farms. People's came here and then never heard from their family, or there wasn't family to give their belongings to. So we've lost a lot of that history. And so the roundtable discussion, the history resources roundtables have been very important. So there's a lot of things going on that I just kind of want to keep in mind and let you know that, there's more than just infrastructure. There's people really being integrated into the site. And of course, last but certainly not least, is the land access program. And we have, at this point, established about 10 acres on the northwest side of the farm. And I think we have like 4 farmers out there right now. A few who are here tonight and going to be up here on the panel. But this really was a program that was to see if there was land accessible for folks, would farmers come out with smaller plots, so you can get anywhere from like 1/8 of an acre up to a couple acres, and how would people use it? And we've had just incredible farmers out there, one that was CSA and then direct to market, and now we're adding 2 more farms this fall. And so it's really exciting to see that. And there's water that is available and storage at this point, so we'll be discussing that tonight as well. It's a little bit difficult to see here, but I wanted to give you a sense of this is actually the growing areas, the farm production areas on the site. And it's sectioned out so that people can see, where is everybody in relation to one another, but also where do we need to run resources such as water and storage and things like that. So there's planning involved. So with this forum, I just wanted to say that this is actually a part of a larger, quote-unquote, farm incubator study that myself, Jason Grimm, and Ilse DeWald, the local foods coordinator, are doing right now. So I wanted to just point out that over the next few months, you'll probably hear from us again. This is, we have investigated the current site of the use. We're going to be doing some interviews. The forum is happening right now. We're going to hopefully get people interested in some focus groups, so please do sign up for that. And then we're also visiting some different farm incubator type models. We're on the Pacific Northwest area at the beginning of March, and we're going to be doing a market analysis. We're going to have some draft research and then an open house to kind of give it back to the community and say, this is what we've come up with. What kind of feedback and input do you have there? So I wanted to just point out to you that this is just one opportunity to really get involved in this, and there will be several others as well. So thank you so much for being here. And then we'll also be presenting, obviously, our final conclusions and recommendations in June to the supervisors. But with that, I want to say thank you again, and thank you. We are going to be transitioning now to our regional farmer panel, and I want to invite that. So the screen is going to go up, and the lights are going to come up, and thank you.
My name is Ilse DeWald. I'm the local foods coordinator for Johnson County, and I have the pleasure to be the staff liaison for the Food Policy Council. I'm going to be moderating today's regional farmer panel. So excited these guys could be here to talk about some of their stories and to get us inspired and excited for our discussion groups. So first off, I think I'm just going to invite the farmer panel to go down the line, introduce themselves, and with their name, farm, and primary crops or markets. Take it away.
Okay, I'll start. Can you hear me? Yeah. Oh, can you hear me? Is that good? Okay, great. I'm Dana Burtness. I live in southeastern Minnesota. My husband and I run Nettle Valley Farm. We are hog farmers mainly. We raise about 50 to 60. We finish 50 to 60 pastured hogs on organic feed and pasture each year. So that's our livestock crop. And then our other crop is hopefully young, successful beginning farmers. So we started an incubator farm program this past year. We currently have 2 incubatees at our farm. So pastured pigs and young regenerative livestock farmers. Those are the 2 things that we're hoping to produce.
I'm Zach Couture. I'm the farm manager and manage the education for an incubator farm in Des Moines called Global Greens. I work with Lutheran Services with people who came here as former refugees, so they farmed in their own countries. And they said they want to farm, so we help get people land access. We have a beginning farmer program, like a community farm, about 8 acres of vegetables, and then graduates farming on another 15 acres, and then hopefully another 12 coming up soon, which is a lot of vegetables. Primary markets, we started our own farmers markets, and then we also run 100+ member CSA that we aggregate from all the produce of our farmers. Primary crops would be vegetables and, dreams, of course. We're in the business of cultivating dreams, so.
Good evening. My name is Alfred. Yes, good evening. My name is Alfred Martial. I do farm at the Johnson County Pool Farm on the 2.5 acres. This year will be another additional half an acre that I added in my production. And my primarily crops is habanero peppers. And the idea behind is to be able to manufacture and produce a hot sauce. I'm into added value. That way I don't just do the same thing like everybody else is doing. And in the meantime also I introduce vegetables just to keep up with the expenses that most farmers are facing, including myself. So I also will include different vegetables that will sell fresh, but my main idea is to be able to either freeze or process. That way I can sell throughout the year, especially this time of the year that we are not farming. I think that's what I have for you.
Hello, I'm Derek. I'm here from Ecollective Farm. We're a local CSA farm. We also grow garlic for seed. We sell a lot of food to New Pie.
Awesome, thanks. And if you guys notice too, on the back of your agenda, there's a little bit of details about some of the farmers that we have here today and their farm operations, if you're curious. So I'm curious, I think most of you said where you're farming now, but if there's a story, especially since our title is Land Access and Beyond, of where you're farming right now and why are you farming there today? So we can start, perhaps Zach wants to start.
So where do we farm? So the reason that we started farming is just people said, hey, I want to farm, right? So we started community gardens just by finding places anywhere that people would let us dig up. We still kind of do that. It's just a little bit bigger now, looking for like 12 or 20 or something like that acre places to dig up. And we're still just about as understaffed as we were when we started trying to start new farms and stuff like that, because it takes a lot to get a farm up and going. Why do we farm there? We'll farm wherever people will let us, pretty much. But I don't know what we just kind of will dig up anywhere people will let us. That's why we farm there. My family's from Des Moines, so that's why I'm here specifically. But but yeah, I think it's cool when you find a piece of land that you love and then you just keep working at it, and so that's why we're and then we lose community gardens every year. We lost like 3 acres of community gardens last year, so people who were refugees are refugees again, like because of development, so we're always looking for land, any in Des Moines area.
Just like I said before, I do farm at the Johnson County Pool Farm, and it was very difficult for me to have access to land. And when I first relocated to Iowa, I looked around and see the possibility of renting a piece of land for me to continue, because I was also farming in Maine for the last 5 years there. And because of my family relocated here, so I moved with my family here in 2017. And so it was a challenge to have land access. And I actually farmed for a season on Route 1, Highway 1, going to Wakalona. And again, the price was just higher at the beginning. And when I heard from the land access program, so I quickly jump on it. And so this season will be my second year there. And so it's just a blessing for me to have access to land at a reasonable price.
To continue on the theme, land access is very difficult for all beginning farmers. My story is no different. I traveled around, bounced around, finding different places to try to start growing. Eventually, I'm in Cedar County, Mechanicsville, and I was given access. I have a favorable agreement with a friend who's also, we have a landlord-tenant agreement at the moment. My farm's nicely close to a bunch of markets. We're about half an hour from Cedar Rapids, half an hour from Iowa City, an hour from Dubuque, an hour from the Quad Cities. So as far as population centers, we're close enough to all those places, though we only do service Iowa City and Cedar Rapids at the moment. Like I said, we're in Cedar County, but we sell very little food in our home county. We have to leave and bring it to other places.
I'll jump in. So we farm in southeastern Minnesota, which is about half an hour north of Decorah. So I think of myself as an honorary Iowan. Ever since at least my people on my dad's side got off the boat from Norway about 6 generations ago, we farmed and lived in Houston County, in southeastern Minnesota. My dad is actually the first one in that side of the family to not grow up, or to leave the farm, and so I was the first one in our family to not grow up on a farm. And so it felt really special to me and important to me to be able to go back to that area where my ancestors, many of them are buried, and farm there. We figured, we know that community and networks are everything when it comes to making a small farm work and a beginning farm work. And so we figured if we're going to have to go and plant ourselves somewhere new. I grew up in the Twin Cities. My husband also grew up in the Twin Cities. We figured instead of just going to some random small town where we didn't know anybody, we might as well go somewhere where we have roots. We actually have a Burtness family century farm in our family still, but it's owned by my dad and his 2 siblings. And our initial effort was to rent part of that farm, but even in that situation, they couldn't agree enough to give me and my husband access to that land. So we ended up having to buy our own farm, which was really difficult. Land is expensive. We have 70 acres of pasture and woods that was sold as hunting land, and the only way we were able to get it is because it was viewed as sort of like junk land or hunting land. And we were able to get an FSA loan for the 50% down payment that was required. So over and over again, we got really lucky and were able to access land. But I can't imagine what it would have been like if English wasn't our first language, or if we both hadn't had college degrees and a lot of like experience wading through bureaucracy and that sort of thing. So a lot of luck went into getting our land, but a lot of privilege too. We were able to save up. My husband is a first generation American. His parents came from Vietnam. They're refugees, but in my family, all of our historical wealth that has come down through the generations is all based off stolen land in Minnesota and the Dakotas. So I think acknowledging that aspect in terms of a lot of the young farmers that I know, the way that they've been able to get access to land is through family help, which is really wonderful. But I also, at least in my own situation, want to acknowledge where that family stability has come from over the last 6 generations. So that's something that I wanted to talk about. And so that's one of the reasons why we've, especially for other folks who don't come from such generational privilege, we want to have a low-cost opportunity for other folks to get started in farming in such a wonderful area where we have a lot of connections. So that's why I farm where we farm.
Great. Yeah, and I think leading into the next question, we're talking about community support too. How can the community gather together and utilize the resource that is the Johnson County Historic Poor Farm to help support our aspiring and current farmers? So in talking about that, would pose it to the panel to describe a time that a farm mentor or organization or community resource helped you with your farming journey. And I think we'll popcorn it out, so whoever wants to take it can go first.
So I'm not from a farming family. My grandfather and on back were farming, but I didn't grow up on a farm. And so when I eventually decided I wanted to farm, I think probably the smart thing to do would have been to find a mentor. I didn't do that. I did find some good organizations, though. I've utilized PFI and Moses quite a bit. Went to a lot of their conferences in the wintertime. Used them as a resource and found community there, and they helped me to answer a lot of questions that I had.
I personally we moved to the U.S. from the DRC, which is the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in early 1999. That's when we actually relocated here due to the war coming from the east part of the country there. My family owned and operated 50 hectares, which is a little bit of, if you do the conversion there, it's around maybe 100 acres. 125 acres if you do the math. So and there we were doing most of cassava roots plant, which is, you eat the leaves as vegetables and the same plants give you the roots. And so I kind of grew up in that environment. Again, it was not like on the farm, but we own the land and they will have farmers working for us there. But I was always around. That's how I gained the little bit of experience that I brought back with me here. So currently, I resource myself, Iowa Valley Conservation Development IVCD with Jason, and have been very good resources for me because they're on site and they answer a lot of my questions initially, and it's ongoing. Every time I have a concern or a question, because in the Congo, as you know, it's hot. It's tropical region, and here has to learn how to farm in different environments, especially at this time of the year where they have a hoop house that I never saw before. Never needed it. So I'm currently a member of the PFI. I just joined them, and there's a lot of resources there too that I gained through the conferences, and again I have neighbors there. So it's to be more pragmatic. I discuss with my neighbors who happen to be in this audience today, and if I have a question, I ask, and vice versa. So we kind of keep that learning process ongoing, because there's not really a cap that you can reach. There's always room to improve. That's how
I mean, so as a program, we have a lot of funders, so I won't go through all of those, or, university resources, people who are willing to come and give trainings to people, because I'm not an expert on everything. I will just put in a plug for the importance of people being open and willing to come and to teach other people and sharing that knowledge so that it gets passed on. I think we're in a time when a lot of knowledge from our forebears didn't get passed on, whether that's just like how to make your own clothes or can things and stuff like that. So it really is important to get out there and be teaching people the things that because, like we're all up here just because someone has helped us along the way, personal people, organizations, and things like that. So I just want to say thanks.
A lot of folks have helped me along the way as well, including my family and a lot of nonprofits like Practical Farmers of Iowa, Land Stewardship Project. I took their Journey Person program. But actually, I used to be a vegetable farmer. I got started with wholesale vegetable farming back in the day, and I was actually incubated. And so I was at an incubator farm that doesn't actually exist anymore, but it was all veggies, and I had access to just a phenomenal array of equipment that saved me a lot of wear and tear on my body right away, gave me a community to sort of commiserate with when in my first year of farming, a 500-year flood wiped out a third of my crops, and then that weekend we got a hailstorm, the size of Roma tomatoes that wiped out the rest of my crops. So that's been a big part of the reason why Nick and I have found it just very important that we need to pay it forward. And that's one of the biggest reasons why we started our incubator farm program, so we could be sort of that safer, slightly more protected space where people can make really good decisions and encounter disasters that are just going to happen because you're farming and it's risky. And so hopefully that they can build up a little bit more of a nest egg and some resilience when they decide to go up on their own. So that initial incubator farm program was probably the thing that helped me get started in farming the most.
Cool. And since you kind of opened into the next question, Dana, maybe you can describe how you've mentored or supported other aspiring or current farmers.
Sure. Yeah, our program is kind of unique in that it's not a nonprofit. We don't have any sort of separate business entity or NGO entity outside of our farm. So we just run our farm as is and then sort of work our incubator farm program in with that. So what we offer is access to land, access to most of our equipment. Sometimes we have to end up doing custom work for people because I just don't trust anyone else to drive my tractor just yet, but we'll do custom work for them. And in exchange, they do about, last year it was 20 hours a month of labor in exchange for access to the program. This year, I think we're going to knock that down to 12 hours a month. That's their payment. Then we also give them an opportunity to rent a room in our house and join in on our joint food program. We all chip in $200 a month and cook dinners together, which is great because I only have to cook dinner once a week, which is fantastic. So our one incubatee, Bailey, has goats and meat ducks and egg ducks. And then our other incubatee, Heidi. So Bailey is Listen More Farm. If you want to follow their farm on Instagram, it's beautiful, beautiful photography. Then also Heidi Egger from Radical Heart Farm raises hair sheep, a Katahdin Dorper cross, and raised 2 batches of Freedom Ranger chickens this year, but is also sort of figuring out whether or not she wants to do that again. Last year we offered some sort of informal co-marketing opportunities, but this year we're formalizing that a little bit more to try to figure out, well, okay, my pork customers are probably the kind of people who want to buy organic pastured chickens or duck eggs. And so figuring out how we can really build that up and even expand it beyond the incubatees. How can we help sell our friends, our farmer friends, goods from the area too? Because sort of the overall theme is like, we don't all have to do everything. That's one of the best parts of Incubator Farm, running an incubator farm and having more of a community-oriented farm. So those are, I think I covered the basics of how we're mentoring folks. They can be there for 1 to 3 seasons, although we are open to the idea that it really does take sometimes a lot longer than 1 to 3 seasons to build up that nest egg and feel confident in your abilities to then go off and start your own farm. So we try to be clear about, it's not a job, it's not an internship, it's not an apprenticeship, it's not a commune. The idea is that you come, you have your own LLC, you have your own business insurance, but we help each other out, and then hopefully you'll stay in the area and add to the really neat neighborhood that we already have.
So we started out thinking that we could incubate people in 3 to 5 years, and we still have a lot of those people on our 8 acres, because people just find like a niche that they like, where they're like, I like this 1/4 acre for myself, right? And I think, being a full-time sustainable, both economically and environmentally sustainable farmer is very difficult. So, a garden's the right size for some people that we've incubated, and that's totally okay. And so, and in terms of our program, like, we have developed an entire curriculum with benchmarks and certain classes people have to take before they graduate. Typically, people enter PFI's Savings Incentive Program before they move off on their own, so that gives them a chance to create a business plan and save $2,400, which is also matched by PFI, so that they have, again, a nest egg to move off. That timeline is that's gone, though. We've just realized that providing land access is really like the key, because I can create a program where, people have to go to a certain number of classes and have certain benchmarks and things like that. But until people just have land and then no, I can't handle this anymore, or this is the right size or something like that, then that's where people really start learning on their own. I try to teach people skills like using drip tape or, laying weed fabric or, mechanical cultivation. But if people don't have enough land to carry out those procedures or different cultivating methods, and it's also, I have to be culturally sensitive when I'm doing that. I can't just be like, this is how you farm, because people have great ways that they farm already. So yeah, that's what we do. We try to just teach people to be more efficient and build on the skills they have by offering land access and a means to building upon the skills they have already, really. Which is, and you can't just be like a good farmer either, right? You can't just know how to grow a radish. You have to know how to sell your radish too. So and you can love the earth and all that, but if you can't make money, you're not going to hold on to your land. So that's something we try to teach, and it's a really hard balance, but it's a hard reality too.
I personally don't have any employee, I would say, or anybody that work for me. I do most of the handwork by myself. But by handwork, I mean the day-to-day operation, but the Jason and with the Iowa Valley helped me lay the plastic with the machine and do the tractor work and all that big operation that I can do manually. But in terms of mentorship, I don't really set up. I'm not set up to have someone on board yet. But I do get help when I harvest my habaneros. It's just work intensity that I can't do it by myself. So I hire people at the end of the season when I do the harvesting, I got and I charge by bucket. So you fill this bucket by a certain amount of dollars, and that we agree before the harvesting began, and that's how I was able to harvest all my habaneros. And then I was doing the washing and the storage, which was another big task. I am currently a member of the PFI, and I was approved with the Saving Incentive Program with PFI. Again, being new to it, it's at the end of the year 2, I will be able to purchase a tractor. That's what I'm trying to use the funds for. And as I grow, I'm open-minded, and I keep my eyes out there to see if there's any opportunity in terms of tools. Being a handyman, I'm always looking at them, yard sales and free stuff on, what is the website? Craigslist.
Dangerous.
So that's all I can say.
We've had a lot of successful farmers come through our farm over the years. We hire folks, give them a wage. They get a lot of experience working on our farm. They have a pretty long leash. I'm pretty hands-off boss. I've made a ton of mistakes in my time, so a lot can be learned from that. I can give the benefit of my experience. Depending on how long folks stay and what their interests are, some have had access to land, equipment. They've started their own businesses or enterprises on the farm while still working for us until they could get legs under themselves. I continue to reach out to a lot of people that have worked with me in the past, make sure they're doing okay, check in with them, answer their questions. And likewise, now they've grown to be peers, and I can ask them a lot of questions myself.
Awesome. So now moving to more forward thinking of like what's coming up next. I'm wondering for each of you, what is your next goal, current goal, or next challenge that you see for yourself in the season ahead or in a few seasons ahead farming?
Mine's straightforward, so I'll start. We'd really like to add an additional incubatee. So if you know anyone, it has to be exactly the right person with the right enterprise, though, because we all live together and work together, and so it's very crucial to find the exact right match for that. But I think our land has opportunities. We have a small sawmill, so if somebody wanted to thin out our pine plantation and do a custom sawmill operation. I think we have more room on the farm for various poultry, like maybe somebody wanted to do turkeys. I think we also have room for some additional, maybe flowers. Maybe we're not really set up for horticulture crops, but that's a possibility. So I guess we'd like to add one more incubatee, mostly because we have one more room in the house that could be filled with an incubatee. Do more formalized cooperative marketing and bringing more farmers in. We have a new program in southeast Minnesota, northeast Iowa called Driftless Grown. And one of the ideas there would be to do some sort of aggregation or whole diet CSA made up of products from all over the region. And then I think another current goal of mine is to do more work with power building membership organizations like Land Stewardship Project, because I think no matter how much we do on an individual farm level, I still think there are these massive power structures at play that are shaping everything around us, the water that we swim in, that makes it very difficult for young farmers and emerging farmers to swim in that water. And unless we're doing joining forces with groups that are building collective power and doing rural organizing on that work. I mean, sometimes it feels like all the stuff we do on a local level is 100 times harder. Or on my bad days, sometimes I just feel like it's not for anything unless we're doing some of that a lot, that much bigger political organizing work. So that's another thing that in my head anyways, is a current challenge and will continue to grow to make up more of my winter work, because summer is busy with chasing pigs around, but then winter, that's something that I'd like to work more on.
Yeah, I'll kind of skip this and I'll go to the challenges one because I like complaining a lot. So, but yeah, land access and all what she said too.
As for me, I'm currently working on the marketing side of the business. So I'm working on building a website that I have not completed yet. It's ongoing. And second thing that in terms of challenges that I face, initially was a lot of regulations in terms of making the hot sauce itself. I initially thought I could just go in the commercial kitchen and make the sauce and sell it. Then I realized that there's a lot into it, and Iowa does not let you do any low acid. You need to do a lot of either go to a co-packer or have a facility that will have all those requirements. So I had to send a sample to Nebraska to a food process authority. They will look at it and they will get back to me whether it's approved for human consumption or not. And after that, I will call the Iowa of appeal. Then I will apply and have them come in, inspect the whole process, and then they will decide if I could go forward or not. So I'm kind of in the limbo, like I don't know if the process will, I hope it will succeed, and it will succeed, but I'm still kind of, it doesn't depend on me. There's a lot of uncertainty that I'm facing. But I'm willing to follow all those steps, all the challenges that will face itself, and just take one at a time and have the sauce ready, because my customers are waiting for the product.
So goals, I would like to see more people on the land growing human food. I want to continue to improve the soil and the water. And some of the biggest challenges with that is fitting food agriculture inside of capitalism, which is a very tricky endeavor.
We're going to solve that tonight, right?
Awesome. I think that, we kind of touched on some personal challenges and some larger community challenges. Did anyone else have any thoughts on challenges for our community, for current aspiring farmers, for a person who says, I want to start a farm today, that you've heard, that you've experienced? Any thoughts on what it's going to be like for future beginning farmers?
I'll take this because I work with people who want to become beginning farmers. I've been doing it for about 10 years, getting people with gardens and things like that. Just piggybacking off what Derek said, I think I was joking with Jason earlier too, like what challenges don't beginning farmers face? Right, like land access, capital, right? Because typically if you're a beginning farmer, it means that you didn't grow up on a century farm and your parents didn't have land, right? So you don't come from land or money or privilege or things like that. Also, Grinnell Heritage Farm just announced they're closing down, right? So there's market viability and saturation, and the food needs to be near places where there's people, right? And I think it's unintelligent maybe to say that we've reached a point of market saturation, because Iowa, even though we have 33 million cultivatable acres, is importing like 85 to 90% of our food crops, right? Like, I think if we closed our doors off from the outside of Iowa, like we'd run out of food in 2 weeks. So that's something to think about in terms of like the systems that we have in place to take the food from the fields to the people. that like something is definitely failed, right? There's a lot of failures in it. You know, if we didn't have cheap fuel, like we couldn't get the food at the price that we do in the gas station, or not at the gas station, but in the supermarkets, right? We wouldn't be able to have supermarket food. We'd have to know a farmer. You know, and so like Jason said earlier, like the local food fad is over. You know, but people still need food. And so there's a lot of consumers that are not reached. But the important thing there is that, you know, to be able to sell the food, you have to be able to make money as a farmer, right? You have to be able to be viable. And the system itself is not set up for people to get land either, right? So near Des Moines, you know, they're developing land, so land prices are so high you can't get land. And when there is a homestead available, right, like a house with 10 acres, somebody who's got a corporate job is going to buy it for, you know, $2.5 million. Like you can't cash flow out a $2.5 million homestead. So, you know, that pushes people out into rural areas, but rural areas, there's no people to sell food to. So, you know, in terms of like how the entire system set up is set up for like industrial agriculture, you know, capitalist people like working with who have money already can buy land, more land, right? And there's a lot of land that's going to be changing hand in the next 10 years because the average age of a farmer is like what, like 60 plus year. Joe, you would know the answer to that. Like that's your shtick at Silt. 65 years old, right? So there's thousands and hundreds of thousands of acres of land that are going to be for sale for beginning farmers if they could figure out how to get on it, but they don't, like, you know, people don't have money. There's no market system in place to get the food to the grocery stores anyway. So it's like, I mean, there's a lot that needs to be done on a systemic level, I think. And it, you know, like that's my point too. Like, and so I like to complain, so I'm getting on a soapbox, but like, this is the one I had the most points on. Because I work, like, you know, like, I mean, that's really what the problem is that people can't get land because of the way that everything's set up. And people need to be growing more food, regenerating soils, right? Because you can grow food and regenerate the soil and feed people at the same time, right? So, and if you look at, anyway, yeah. And I mean, there's climate change as well. That was one of the reasons Grinnell Heritage Farm said they can't do it, right? I mean, and in terms of consumers, right, there's convenience. And then when the local food thing started, people were like, they're going to go out of their way to go get local foods. But now you can get like Blue Apron delivered to your door with an entire meal ready to go, right? And the people who have money can afford those things, but the people who don't have money can't afford fresh vegetables because the farmers have to sell the food at such a high price that they have to sell it to rich people. Right? You sell a tray of microgreens for $20 to a restaurant, and each one of those little sprouts is going to be worth like 50 to 70 cents on the like little plate of food that the person buying it is getting from, right? So like, I mean, there's a lot of people that could use vegetables, but they can't get vegetables because they don't have enough money either. So like, it's a gigantic problem that I feel like we have, and it's solvable. And it takes everybody to figure out how to do it. And it's got to happen soon because there's a lot going on that needs to be solved really soon. And so just, that's the end of that.
I totally would echo the urgency that you're expressing because I do feel like, especially at least in Minnesota, this might be the same in Iowa, we're at a crossroads where in the next 5 to 10 years we might actually see extinction of medium-sized farmers. The farm crisis is that bad. It seems like the folks at the very top who have huge farms and access to lots of resources, if you actually look at the data, it seems like they're doing okay. And then some small farms, like my farm, isn't feeling the effect of the farm crisis necessarily. We sell really, really amazing pork to folks who can afford it, and we're making a profit, and we're growing every year. My husband has an off-farm job that he loves, and he's not going to get rid of that anytime soon. So we're doing okay, but the folks in the middle who don't necessarily have that stability from an off-farm income, or it's actually sometimes even if they do, I'm really worried that in this next generation that it's going to be completely polarized. Like you either have to be absolutely massive or you have to be really tiny and specialized. So that's something that I worry about, and I think all the urgency in your voice is totally warranted. I mean, we're sort of at a crossroads with climate change. Another thing that I would say that we're at a crossroads with is consolidating corporate power, and that's just like on a runaway train. And so I guess I would want to encourage folks, again, if you want to do something about climate change or do something about big ag and industrialized farming that disrespects the soil and disrespects people and disrespects communities, I would say join a power building organization like the Iowa Farmers Union, Minnesota Farmers Union, Land Stewardship Project, any sort of group that makes you feel like you have a home and you're able to do collective action and collective power building. I think is like if I could encourage you to have one takeaway from tonight, it would be to join a power building organization, a membership organization. And then also, if you own land and you're a farmer, at least, and you're thinking about maybe this is something that I want to try, I would say come talk to me or after this, or maybe we're getting into this with the round tables. But if you are a farmer or you own land and you want to dig into the specifics of how to do the messy work of living and working in community, we're just starting with this, but we've developed some best practices thus far. So I'd encourage you, if you think of yourself as a good communicator and sort of a community-oriented person, definitely think about starting an incubator farm program on your land. If you've been described as impossible to talk to and very rigid, then maybe think twice about that. But like I said, come find me. We can talk about that.
Does anyone else have anything else to add? Concerns or challenges for future farmers?
I mean, we touched on a lot of them that I have. Climate change is a big challenge. Land access, water quality. We want to have more food farmers. That means we need to sell more food. People need to eat more food that's grown around them. We need more people on the land in general to do the work. There is an awful lot of labor involved in growing food. And it's a very heavy job, so we need a lot of hands on that. I would say with all of those things, a big challenge is getting any sort of insurance on growing food. Currently, it's not really an insurable situation. Were I to grow a commodity, I could insure that and gain government subsidies on that. But when you choose to grow food for human consumption, that is not always an easy thing to get insurance on. Those are my top challenges.
For me, it will be the financial aspect of the business, access to funds. You may have a good idea, you may have the strength to do it. Again, the land will be a big hurdle. And once you have the land, then you realize that you need everything else. You need a tractor. And I've been, like I said, looking around, they are not cheap. So they average 10K and up. So the funds will be something that could become easily a challenge for someone who want to get into farming. And it's easy as you grow, just your body will wants to rest more, which is a natural process there. So you need more of equipment as you grow. And the more equipment, meaning that you need the funds. So it's an ongoing demand that will always be there for future farmers.
Great. Well, with that, I would ask that you join me in thanking our panelists for sharing their thoughts and stories. and we're going to be moving into a 5-minute break. I know we kind of talked a lot about the urgency and concerns that we have in the system, so this is an opportunity to stretch a bit, get some coffee, and get ready to talk about our dreams and the opportunities that we have before us, because something I am really encouraged by is just all of you in the audience, and I know such awesome knowledge and depth of knowledge and experience, and the resources are here, and they're in this community, and we're going to tap into that. All right, so we're going to move into our community input discussion sessions, and for the structure, we have Food Policy Council members who are going to be facilitating or helping take notes on the various topics, and they are all seated at a different table, and they each have a card with their topic written on it, so you can take a look now. And they have a few starter questions, but this is a very loosely guided conversation, just trying to get ideas flowing and hear from the community. So we have time for everyone to go to 3 different topic sessions for about 15 minutes each. So I will let you know, I'll give a 2-minute warning. If the sound system's working, we'll have an awesome musical interlude to help you know that you need to be switching. And you're also welcome to stay at one table the whole time. But something that I ask is that we keep the groups to about 10 people or less. If you notice that everyone's flocking to the topic that you're really excited about but could go to second, maybe choose your second choice and slim down the group a little bit so that more people get a chance to contribute. After the 3 switches, our Food Policy Council facilitators will give a 2-minute summary for everyone of all 3 groups and everything that was discussed, and we're putting this into a larger record of all that is discussed today. So, thinking about all these discussion groups, there's a bunch of great topics out there. We're looking for how can we support aspiring or beginning and current farmers in our community. Looking at opportunities that we have on site at the historic Poor Farm, but also maybe more intangible community resources, and how can we use the Johnson County Historic Poor Farm as an opportunity and a space to collaborate and connect. All right, so with that, I'm going to take a look and see which group you want to go to first, and everybody break. All right, I'd love to hear from our facilitators. We're going to wrap up our conversation so we can focus in again. We're going to start with the hearing from Paul, who's going to talk about financial and business planning and what his group talked about.
Our group was the exciting financial and business planning. And we had a nice mix of people, 3 eaters, one person who's working at the Poor Farm, and someone who's bought land and is trying to decide what to do with it. If you have land access, then I think you want to start small if you're and feed your family and grow from there. The access to capital is obviously a barrier that needs to be addressed. We certainly didn't come up with any answers there. And off-farm work plays an important role in how you finance your farm. So in other words, can a farmer give up that town job so they can work on the farm? This sounds pretty simple, but it's really true. Write down what you do. It's not really a plan unless you have written down what you do. A question that came up that needs answering is how do you value your own labor? And a corollary to that is how do you calculate a mix of volunteer labor, your labor, sweat equity, interns, et cetera, et cetera? How do you create that? You have to write it down, I think. We talked about a lot of different types of approaches to different things, like seed saving. If you have an unusual type of seed that you're growing, save the seeds and grow your own. Negotiating purchases. There's a role for cooperatives in there. And then finally, how do you approach it if you're a new farmer? Do you take a market approach and say, people are doing these things, so I can fill that need? Or do you take an organic approach and talk about what you want to do, what's suited to your land, your personality, and pursue it from there? So that's my 2 minutes.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. And again, he has the clipboard for financial and business planning. All right. Now we have Christy.
So we were on equipment sharing and really good feedback, but the idea that we walked away from is it'd be great if the poor farm started implement library where we would look to supply that equipment from grant money or ask for companies that had old equipment that would benefit from a donation to provide it. And then different tools such as we got the list of all the tools that would be there, like no-till drills and walk-behind plows and a number of things that you could check it out for a fee. That fee would go to covering your maintenance and insurance, and that people who are checking it out could either do an exchange of giving it money, or if they have expertise with it, they could have time in the library to be doing maintenance and working it. So in this way, we start to enable our farmers, not just those on the par farm, but others who are do have a land elsewhere that would have appropriate equipment to do their farming. So that's ours. Yay!
I was in the cooperative management group. We did not come up with solutions or pilot programs. We did have a lot of amazing questions at our table. So what does cooperative management look like? How can it be used as a creative solution for overcoming land access barriers? Lots of conversation around how people of all abilities can be their expertise and assets can be used as a part of all of the farming that's happening out at the poor farm, as well as the cooperative management side. Great emphasis on farmer autonomy. The idea that if we focus on vision and values, the details will fall into place. And highlighting who has a voice in how all of this cooperative management gets set up, and making sure that, you know, people have a seat at the table. Good ideas about landowner education so that people that are maybe starting at the poor farm have a place to go when they want to farm off the poor farm. Educating landowners on how they can transition the land to the next generation. Great idea about if we have different entities out at the poor farm, what does it look like for those entities to collaborate? So right now, Grow Johnson County Global Food Project and the Farm Incubator, what would it look like to have like a representative board or informal group that kept in touch so that the synergies of those programs could be utilized?
All right, awesome. Who am I coming to next? All right, Liz.
Okay, so we were education and training. We basically solved all the problems. We have everything planned out now. Resources, there's of course, sky's the limit on sort of what could happen out there from an education and training standpoint. Obviously, how to farm. Transitions, how to get into farming. Kind of a living history farm sort of perspective for maybe the community more to really get reconnected with our food and where our food comes from and how food is actually produced. Like I think Teresa talked about how cows have something down between their legs where milk comes out. Nobody knows that anymore. Is there access to the poor farm by bus was a good question. Training of community people to work with kids. There was a good example about the school and the school district being able to come out and actually use the Poor Farm as a classroom for special programs since they didn't get to have their FFA programming that they were hoping to have. And then food and health and wellness. The Wellness Trail folks were here, so of course we had some good wellness commentary. Mental health. And then some good ideas about outside resources. PFI could host things there. Food and Water Watch, Food Policy Council, SILT, Iowa Valley RC&D already doing stuff out there, of course, Backyard Abundance doing stuff. And then some questions, what do we want to have answered? The part that maybe was the most interesting was each group had something about advocacy and advocating back to like the State House. And so using this as a means or a vehicle to help bring awareness, but then also have a unified voice as to this is what agriculture should be like and not the conventional crap we're doing now.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz. All right, Sean.
We had a couple of probably definitional challenges and self-admittedly probably a little bit of scope creep, which may have been a facilitator problem. But I think if I could loosely bucket most of the comments that I heard, they fell into 4 categories. There was this might be part of my scope creep, we had some comments around education and mentoring. A lot of comments around the efficiency and scalability of producers in this market space. A lot of commentary around demand creation, and a lot of commentary around the broad theme of public policy and subsidization. So when you I think specifically about how entities like the historic Poor Farm might be able to engage in some of that stuff. An example that came up was the food safety challenge that sort of sits out there as a big elephant in the middle of the room in some of this channel. And could there be a role for a entity like the Poor Farm to play in helping to educate people that want to participate in this market space about the challenges they're gonna face relative to food safety? Another great example that came up a couple times in varying themes was this general lack of processing capability across the state. And could there be opportunities for an entity like the Poor Farm to engage in helping people do cooperative processing and creating some scalability by bringing a bunch of producers who had a similar need together? I love the value add conversation on the hot sauce. I think everybody is trying to figure out ways, particularly with very perishable commodities, how you participate in markets that you can't access in January when you have a fresh product. So I think that's a well acknowledged problem, and certainly we know across the state that processors who have tried to get businesses up off the ground and run have struggled without an entity like the Poor Farm that can help facilitate some of that stuff. The demand creation side, obviously a big theme that I think comes up pretty repetitively is you've got I think the storyline that I heard a couple times was you have a sort of 2 kinds of consumers out there. You've got a very affluent consumer that can afford to buy a more expensive good, to put it bluntly, or you've got somebody that is really, really passionate about finding locally grown products, who's willing to spend a bigger portion of their disposable income to get at those products. But there's a whole segment of the market where there's a real need that's not being satisfied right now. So we certainly didn't have the answers for that. If I had that, we could probably all go home. And then the last one was this broad theme around public policy, and certainly, we've got some great resources at the Poor Farm that I think can help with that. But this whole theme of how are we applying agricultural subsidizations in this country, both at the national and state level as well as at the local level, and how can some of that subsidization money be funneled to really address the first 3 of those issues that I talked about. So I think I think I'll stop there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, I'm running over to Stephen.
Hi. We were social farming and network, and we had some of the same conversations other people have. What's the term? How do we define it? If we're going to talk about policy issues and we're going to send it up the food chain, what is it that we're talking about? Social and farming networks create community. They're the eyes and ears, and they're the means to gather and share information. There was talk about the historic Poor Farm being a venue, a hub to pool resources, and that was everything from tools to information. Networks counter isolation and enhance inclusion. And people picked up on this idea in the, I don't know how many acres are going to change hands in the next 5 to 10 years, hundreds of thousands to millions of acres. So networks, how could social networks be used to influence policy about how that land changes? And particularly, since now a lot of women own land, and that land now will be transferred, how can we enhance and support women's roles? Networks are everything, and also the sense of a means to build power.
All right, Keisha.
Thank you for everyone else that went before me that had this elaborate stuff to say, because that's not me. I had land rental and transition, and one of the biggest takeaways was knowing where to go to as a beginner farmer, knowing what land that possibly that you can rent. You guys kept on saying PFI, and that fell on deaf ears for me because I didn't know what that was until we had this group discussion. It was like Practical Farmers of Iowa, and I was like, it's like the Tinder of like land rentals. I was like, what? I didn't know about this. And just thinking about who else doesn't know about that. And talking about the barriers that people face in being interested in being a beginner farmer, such as people of color not knowing those resources available, and what we can do to make those resources available to those individuals. Someone said, and it was from Lynn County, utilizing planning, development, and sustainability, your local government, there's an issue with like there's land rental available, but there's not access to water. But reaching out to planning, development, and zoning to find, before you, I guess, talk to a farmer, see if that was an availability for you, instead of finding later on like, dang, there's no water here. Yeah, that's all I have.
Awesome. All right, Chris.
Thanks. So our group discussed sustainable land management, and we first started off by discussing current resources that exist, and then ended a discussion by talking about where we want things to move in the years to come. In terms of current resources, several were mentioned repeatedly, including the Johnson County Natural Resource Conservation Service, which is under the umbrella of the USDA, but they offer a great many resources to farmers, including pollinator services, strips programs, etc. Also, the Practical Farmers of Iowa came up again, and they're a great resource in addition to the field days, which are present around the state multiple times per year. They're a resource for local farmers to connect with other local farmers. There's a listserv, et cetera, where you can reach out and connect with other individuals. But things that I hadn't heard about included the landfill now offers like compost and mulch at quite inexpensive prices, as well as the Sustainable Iowa Land Trust, or SILT. They actually will provide free consultations to farmers, including you can find out more about topography or soil maps, et cetera, in your given area. In terms of moving forward, one of the interesting things that was put forward by one of our members was perhaps we're branding this inappropriately. We're not looking to necessarily sustain the land, given we've already done substantial harm to it. Maybe it should be called regenerative land management, which I think most groups subsequently really liked that term. But the predominant thing moving forward was our group was interested in the intersection between human health and the land itself, and how the sort of decrement in the quality of soil that we've seen over the past decades to centuries affects individuals, and for instance from nitrate levels in the soil or other waste runoff. Another thing that was brought up was how do we make this take place? How do we incentivize it, which is challenging? Like, do we try to address the issues with crop insurance? Because currently there's a major mismatch in terms of what people plant and what's profitable or sustainable for the farmer. But obviously there's not an easy solution here, but I think at the very least we can identify some of the issues and where we want to move to help us get us there.
Awesome. Thanks. And we got V over here.
Great. So just really quick before I jump into what housing infrastructure, we came up with some great things. I just wanted to say a couple things. So first of all, there is a bus that does run out to the Poor Farm, but because Iowa City is redoing their transit right now, there's a transit study. So I would highly, highly encourage you to actually get on their website and put in there that we would like to have a bus continue to run out there, because currently the concepts that they're putting out, that bus is getting cut. So we really could use input from folks to say, please keep that bus line there. We do get a lot of people that actually use that bus line. And that was my second point, was I failed to mention in my previous presentation that there are actually 2 nonprofits that are out at the Poor Farm, and I apologize for that. Grow Johnson County is out there, and they are a nonprofit that provides fresh fruit and vegetables to local area hunger relief agencies, and they do a fantastic job. And then there's also the Global Food Project of Iowa City that provides kind of communal or community gardens for new Iowans. And those are actually the folks that use the bus system the most. And so I just wanted to put that out there. So again, there's an additional reason why we need to get on that transit study, because it will directly impact some of the low to moderate folks that are already coming to the site. So with that, it is on the City of Iowa City website. And if you left your email, we can reach out to you and provide that link. So thank you for your interest in that. Now, jumping to housing and infrastructure, a lot of what we talked about was accessibility and affordability in terms of, can people actually get onto the site, and then also, is it affordable? And affordability is relative. We understand that. Johnson County has some of the highest rents and home ownership in the state. And so the supervisors had already identified that as like a really big component that the Poor Farm could provide. And I just want to say that the county is really invested in maintaining ownership of the site, so that would already take out part of the cost in terms of affordability. So it would just be the improvements to the site. But people also ask, like, hey, well, what about access to schools or access to grocery stores or things like that? Like, so it's not even just what's on the land, but if people are going to be living out there, what else do they have access to if they're going to be out there? So really great conversations. I love this idea that came up about interconnecting the farm and the community. So if there were part-time farmers out there, they were diversifying their income. Maybe there's a bed and breakfast that's out there related to the farm, and there are events that come out there. So really trying to bring the community in and provide some opportunity for being out on the farm too. So really great conversations. I'd say accessibility, affordability came up time and time again. So thank you everybody for your comments.
Great. Awesome. I think that is everyone. I didn't count, so shout now if you facilitated and didn't summarize. All right, cool. So thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I really appreciate you taking this time and having these discussions and getting together. It's a great community, and if you want to give more input, I am definitely all ears and would love to hear from you. So at the tables still are the clipboards for the focus groups if you're interested in being contacted about talking more. We might not do an individual focus group for each topic. We might combine some, so just to be aware of that based on interest. And anyone else too that isn't in the room tonight that you think we should be in contact with, feel free to jot their names down on the clipboard. That's always super helpful, and hopefully with contact information, or we can seek some out. And thank you tonight too to Scattergood Friends in Farm School that provided our childcare. Woo! Thanks, Ruth and Grace. You did great. And the last thing, too, is there are leftovers boxed over there, some of the pork and rice from tonight. So please take one of those home. And the rest that wasn't served tonight, we're donating through Table to Table. So thank you, everyone, and have a good night.